I still remember the exact moment I realized something was wrong. It hit me like a slap across the face. The sudden, sinking feeling that everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. We'd been engaged for nearly a year, and I'd always believed she was honest, loyal, the one person I could trust with my life. That illusion shattered in a single night, all because I decided to do a routine check on her phone, something I'd never felt the need to do before. The phone was lying face down on the kitchen counter as usual. I reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting to scroll through some photos or texts, maybe a funny meme she'd sent me earlier. But instead, what I found made my stomach knot up tight. The messages were hidden behind a deleted chat folder, but I caught a glimpse of a few words, things like "can't wait to see you tonight" and "don't worry, I'll be careful." My heart hammered as I unlocked her device, my fingers trembling with a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. The messages weren't from her, at least, not directly. They were from a number I didn't recognize, but I immediately knew who it belonged to, my best friend, that bastard. They'd been talking for weeks, maybe longer. I scrolled further and found more. Flirty comments, plans to meet up, secret emojis. My palms went cold. How could she? How could I have been so blind, so naive that I never saw the signs? It was late at night when I found the evidence, the dull glow of her phone illuminating the dark kitchen. I felt my throat tighten and my vision blurred around the edges. She'd always said she was committed, that she loved me. But these messages proved otherwise. And what stung worse wasn't just the betrayal, it was the fact that she'd gone to lengths to hide it. Deleted everything, erased her tracks, thinking I'd never find out. I kept scrolling, trying to piece together how long this had been going on. The messages hinted at a secret rendezvous, a clandestine meeting where they'd both pretend nothing happened afterward. And I wondered, how long had I been so stupid? How many times had I looked into her eyes and believed she was telling the truth? It's like suddenly waking from a nightmare, realizing everything I'd ever fought for, everything I'd built my life around, was just a house of cards ready to collapse. I remember clutching her phone so tightly my fingers ached. The scent of her perfume still clung to it, floral, faint but unmistakable. I could almost feel her presence, her warmth, and I hated that I was still craving her approval even now. My mind kept replaying every moment, every word, each small gesture I'd missed that now seemed like a neon sign pointing to her deceit. That night I sat alone in the dark, the phone still in my hand. My stomach twisted with anger and my chest felt heavy, like I'd swallowed a stone. The air was thick with the smell of burnt dinner from earlier, but I couldn't focus on anything except the betrayal I'd uncovered. I looked at the messages one more time and I saw the words just a one-time mistake, like some sick joke. Yeah, right. That excuse doesn't hold up when you're caught red-handed. I knew I couldn't confront her immediately. I needed a plan. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. But deep down, I already knew. She'd lied to me and now I had proof. The trust was gone. It was shattered into tiny pieces that I knew I'd never be able to glue back together. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow, the kind of emptiness that settles deep under your skin. Every breath I took was a reminder of how much I'd lost, my future, my belief in her, maybe even myself. But I also realized something else. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about my dignity, my sense of worth. If she thought she could cheat and lie and get away with it, I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to do it again. I decided then and there, she wasn't going to get away with this. Not without consequences. I didn't yet know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I had to hit back hard in a way she wouldn't see coming. I had to reclaim some sense of control. I looked at her phone again, then at the empty spot on the kitchen counter where her keys usually sat. It was like a switch flipped in my mind. I'd keep the evidence, store it safely, and start planning, because if she thought she could cheat and walk away, she'd better think again. Trust was dead. Revenge was the only thing left to give me a shred of justice, and I'd make damn sure she paid for every single lie she told. The next few days were a blur of anger, planning, and quiet, simmering rage. I stayed up late at night, going over everything I'd found, trying to piece together what her betrayal really meant. She was so confident, so careless, thinking she could hide her tracks forever. But I knew better now. That phone, the evidence, was seared into my mind. It's what I kept going back to just to remind myself I wasn't imagining things. I started noticing small things, her nervous glances when I was around, the way she'd suddenly become clingy or overly protective of her phone. I didn't need to be a detective to see the cracks forming, but I also knew I couldn't confront her without a plan. If I was going to make her pay, I needed to be smart about it. Otherwise, I'd just be another guy angrily throwing accusations that she could brush off. One afternoon, I decided to go all in. I needed evidence that she was still hiding something beyond just the messages. So I set up a little trap knowing her habits. She always left her phone plugged in on the nightstand when she slept. I made sure to be home early that evening, hiding in the shadows of our bedroom, waiting for her to go to bed. The plan was simple. I'd catch her in the act, maybe find more proof, or see who she was actually talking to. She came home around 10 p.m., her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. I could hear her fiddling with her phone, then silence. Then after a few minutes I saw her slip out of the bedroom door, sneaking into the living room trying to be quiet. I stayed perfectly still, my heart pounding harder than ever. I watched her unlock her phone, check a message or two, then quickly put it down on the coffee table. That's when I saw it, her face illuminated by the screen. A new message popped up, and I read the words even from where I was sitting. "Can't wait to see you tonight. No one will ever find out." My stomach clenched so tight I thought I might vomit. She looked around nervously, then quickly locked the phone and slipped it into her pocket. I stayed in my spot, feeling a rush of satisfaction but also a deep, corrosive anger. She'd been lying to me this whole time. I'd caught her red-handed. No denying it anymore. I wanted to yell, to break something, but I kept my composure. Part of me was dizzy from fury, but I knew I had to be smart. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about making her understand that I knew everything. The next morning I confronted her. She was still in bed, scrolling her phone like everything was normal. I sat on the edge of the bed, my jaw clenched so tightly I thought I might crack a tooth. "So, I know what you've been doing," I said coldly, keeping my voice even but firm. "The messages from last night, and I saw you hiding your phone last night, sneaking around." She froze, her eyes darting around the room as if she could disappear into thin air. Her face went white, then red, then back to pale again. "It's not what you think," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, really? Because I think I've seen enough. You lied to me for months. You cheated on me with my best friend, and you think I'm just going to forget." She looked away, tears in her eyes. "It was a mistake, just one time. It didn't mean anything." "Don't give me that bullshit," I snapped, my fists clenching. "You think I'm stupid? I found the messages. I know everything. All those nights I was working late or out with friends, you were with him. You thought you could hide it forever." She tried to speak, but no words came out, just tears. I had never felt so betrayed in my life. It was like someone had torn my heart out with a rusty knife. The anger bubbled over, but I kept my voice steady. "You think I'm going to let this slide? No, not this time. You're going to regret what you've done." Her shoulders shook with sobs, but I wasn't done. I knew I had to execute the next phase of my plan carefully. Because if I was going to make her feel the full weight of her betrayal, I had to be relentless. I was just going to walk away. She needed to see, in a way she couldn't deny, what she had lost. That night I stayed awake, waiting for her to go to sleep again. My mind churned with ideas. I knew her passwords. She'd been sloppy enough to leave a trail. I'd need that for what came next. The moment she was deep in sleep, I'd access her emails, her social media, anything I could find. I needed to gather everything, every shred of proof, to make her understand this wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was a breach of everything we'd built. And once I had it all, I'd decide how to make her pay, because trust, that was dead. And I wasn't about to be the fool who got played, not anymore. I'd take back control, even if it meant burning the whole thing down first. That night I waited in the darkness of our bedroom, every nerve on high alert. My heartbeat hammered in my chest, each thump echoing like a warning. I kept my eyes fixed on the faint glow of her phone, which she'd left charging on the nightstand. I knew I had to act fast. Her sleep was surprisingly deep. I reached out quietly, feeling the cool metal of the phone in my hand. The moment I unlocked it, I was flooded with a rush of adrenaline. Every message, every photo, every detail was there, more evidence of her betrayal. But I didn't need to look through everything right then. I just needed enough to make her realize she'd been caught. I scrolled through her emails and social media accounts, finding more messages, some from her friends, some from him. They all told the same story. A woman who'd been lying to me for months. I copied everything onto a secure drive, making sure I had proof stored safely. I wanted to keep her panic alive, to make her realize I wasn't going to let this go. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about making her understand she'd crossed a line from which there's no return. When I finally slipped her phone back onto the charger, I felt a strange sense of calm. I'd done what I set out to do. Now all that was left was to wait for the right moment. The next morning I confronted her again. She was still half asleep, blinking at me with those innocent eyes so full of lies. I laid the evidence on the table, my voice cold and steady. "So I found all of this," I said, sliding the flash drive across the nightstand. "Proof of everything. The messages, the emails, the plans. You thought you could hide it from me forever, huh?" She looked at the drive, then back at me, her face a mask of guilt and fear. "It was just a mistake," she whispered, voice trembling. "It didn't mean anything. I swear I never loved him. It was a moment of weakness." "Really?" I snapped. "Then why all the secret messages, the lies? Why hide everything if it was just a mistake?" She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "Please don't do this. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. Her tears weren't convincing anymore. I'd heard enough lies, but I wasn't done. I needed to make sure she understood how deeply she'd screwed up. "I've decided," I said quietly but firmly. "You're going to wish you never crossed me. Because I have a plan, something that'll make sure you regret every second of this betrayal." Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see," I replied, packing the evidence into a small folder I had hidden. "This isn't just about revenge. It's about making her understand that I'm not the fool she thought I was, that her actions have consequences." Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on her, gathering more evidence, planning my move. I knew her routines, her weak spots. I wanted her to see that I was serious, dead serious. I started setting up cameras in the house, just enough to catch her when she thought she was alone. I wanted her to realize I was always watching, always one step ahead. One evening, I finally put my plan into motion. I sent her a message pretending to be from a secret admirer, hinting that I'd been watching her, that I knew everything. Her reaction was priceless. She panicked, tried to cover her tracks, but it was too late. I had her exactly where I wanted her. I could feel my fists clenching, the fire burning inside me. She'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and now it was time she paid. I didn't want her to feel just shame. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, exposed, and powerless. This was going to be her wake-up call, when she wouldn't forget. The days that followed were filled with quiet, calculated moves. I knew she was trying to cover her tracks, but I was already in her world now. I'd taken a screenshot of her last message, one where she said, "He'll never find out." That was my signal. She thought she was clever, but I was smarter. And then, finally, I decided it was time. Time to confront her again with everything laid bare. I sat her down in the living room, the evidence in my hands, my voice cold but steady. "You lied to me for months. You cheated, you hid it, and you thought you'd never get caught," I said, voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "Well, now everyone knows, and I mean everyone." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was stupid, I was weak. Don't do this." But I had no mercy left. I looked at her, feeling nothing but emptiness. I handed her the folder and the drive, making sure she saw every document. "This is over," I said plainly. "You want to walk out that door, take your stuff, and never come back. I'm done. You betrayed me, and I'm not going to be the fool anymore." She looked at me, stunned, then nodded slowly. "I understand." I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I knew I'd never forget what happened, but at least now I had taken control. The trust was gone completely. But I was still standing, stronger than ever. As she packed her things and left that evening, I knew one thing for sure. I'd never let someone betray me like that again. The lesson was clear. Trust is fragile, and when it's broken, revenge isn't just a desire, it's a necessity. The house was eerily quiet after she left. I couldn't help but notice how the silence seemed louder than any words ever could be. The walls felt different, less alive, more hollow, like they absorbed all the lies and betrayal I'd uncovered. I sat down on what used to be our couch, staring at the door where she just walked out, clutching her bag. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The revenge had been executed, the truth exposed, but the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. That night, I poured myself a drink and stared at the remnants of our life together: pictures, her favorite mug, the scattered receipts. Every little thing reminded me of what I'd lost, but also what I'd gained: freedom, clarity, the chance to finally breathe again. I'd spent days meticulously planning this, and now that it was done, I wondered what she felt. Guilt, regret, or was she already plotting her next move? Honestly, I didn't care anymore. I knew I needed a moment to myself to process everything. But I also knew I had to be prepared for whatever might come next. She might try to come back, beg, or worse, try to spin it like she was the victim. I refused to be manipulated again. I'd made my decision. I'd cut the cord once and for all. The days that followed were filled with a strange sense of calm. I started cleaning out her side of the closet, throwing away the clothes she'd left behind. Each discarded piece felt like shedding layer of her influence. I kept her phone locked, of course, and made sure all her accounts were deactivated. I didn't want any more surprises. One afternoon, I sat down with my phone to finally block her from all my social media feeds. I was about to do it when I noticed a new message alert from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. I hesitated, then opened it. The message was simple: "You think you've won, but this isn't over." My first instinct was to ignore it. But then I remembered her tears, her begging, her lies. She was trying to play some game, testing my resolve. I clutched my phone tighter, feeling the anger surge again. I knew better than to fall for it. I responded coldly: "There's nothing left to say. You've made your choice. Leave me alone." The reply came quickly: "You're not as smart as you think. Watch your back." A thin smile crept across my face. That's when I realized I'd struck a nerve. She thought she could manipulate me from afar, but I wasn't going to let her. Not anymore. I had outsmarted her, and I was ready for whatever came next. That evening, I went through every contact on her phone, blocking or deleting anyone who might be a threat or could cause trouble. I wanted to cut her off completely, erase her footprint from my life. It was about reclaiming control, making sure she understood she'd lost everything. But then something unexpected happened. I received a call from her. I hesitated for a second before answering, my hand trembling slightly. I kept my tone neutral. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold. She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. Can we talk?" "I don't think so," I said firmly. "You had your chance. Now it's over." I hung up before she could respond. The relief was immediate, but a tiny seed of doubt still nagged at me. Was she really done, or was this just another game? I knew enough to keep my guard up. Revenge was satisfying, but I had to be careful not to let her pull me back in with cheap apologies or false remorse. In the end, I decided I'd already won the most important battle. Trust was gone, and she'd paid the price. I'd learned that betrayal sometimes comes from the people you trust most, and the only way to get through it was to cut ties and move on. No matter how tempting it was to dwell, I knew I had to focus on rebuilding myself. The house was now quiet, empty, but finally mine again. I'd start fresh, create new boundaries, and never let someone manipulate me like that again. As I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had taken control, and no one could take that away from me anymore. The lesson from all this was brutal but clear. Trust is a fragile thing, and when it's broken, revenge isn't just about hurting someone else. It's about saving yourself. Weeks had passed since she left, and I thought I'd found some kind of peace. The house was finally quiet, and for the first time in a long while, I started breathing easier. I threw myself into work, ignored my phone most of the time, and tried to pretend I was okay. But underneath that calm surface, I knew better. The betrayal still lingered, gnawing at me like an unhealed wound. And I knew she hadn't just disappeared into the ether. She was waiting, watching, plotting her next move. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen when I noticed her old necklace on the counter. It was a simple silver chain with a tiny charm. I picked it up, feeling the cold metal against my skin. It was a reminder of everything I'd lost: her trust, my sense of security. I clenched my jaw and shoved it into a drawer, deciding I wouldn't let her get to me anymore. But her presence still lingered in little ways, like shadows slinking into the corners of the house. Later that evening, I was scrolling through my emails when I saw a new message from an unknown account. My stomach twisted. I hesitated, then clicked it open. The message was brief but chilling. "You think it's over, but I'm not done. You'll regret what you did." No signature, no clues, just that ominous note. I stared at it, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It was her. She was trying to scare me, to remind me she was still out there. I took a deep breath and typed a reply. "I don't scare that easily. You've lost everything. Leave me alone." I hit send and leaned back, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on my neck. I knew I should block her, delete the account, but part of me wanted her to believe I was still vulnerable, that I cared enough to respond. That flaw wouldn't last long. I was already planning my next move. The following days, I kept tabs on her activities. I installed a few hidden cameras around the house, just enough to catch her if she came back, or if she tried to mess with me again. I stayed vigilant, knowing revenge isn't just about the big moments, but the small, calculated moves that keep someone on edge. Every time I saw her name pop up on my screen, my blood boiled. But I stayed calm, collected. It was about sending a message. I was done playing her game. One night I caught her in a weak moment. I saw her trying to access my email account, her fingers fumbling over the keyboard. The adrenaline kicked in. I'd set up a trap. I quickly changed all my passwords, then sent her a message from a burner phone. "Nice try, you're too late." Message was simple but effective. I wanted her to know I was always one step ahead, that I wasn't going down without a fight. That was the moment I realized I'd crossed a line. Revenge was no longer just about exposing her. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I was starting to feel like I'd turned into something darker. Still, I told myself it was justified. She lied, cheated, and manipulated me, and she deserved everything she got. Still, it made me wonder, was I becoming her mirror? Was I turning into someone I wouldn't recognize? The final piece of my plan was to cut her out completely. No contact, no exceptions. I gathered her belongings, clothes, jewelry, anything that belonged to her, and placed it all in a box. When she called again, crying and begging for another chance, I refused to answer. I knew if I did, I'd be pulled back into that toxic cycle. The best revenge was denying her access to me altogether. On the day I finally handed her the last of her things, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, but I also felt free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the constant paranoia. I was finally reclaiming my life, no more hiding, no more pretending. I handed her the box, looked her in the eyes, and said, "This is over, don't come back. If I see your face again, I'll make sure you regret it." She looked at me stunned, then nodded slowly. Her eyes were glassy, a mix of regret and anger. I turned away and closed the door behind her. That was the last time I saw her, and honestly, I didn't care. I knew I'd done everything I could to protect myself, to punish her for what she'd done. Now, as I sit here reflecting, I realize the biggest lesson I learned. Revenge isn't just about payback. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your boundaries, and your sense of control. When trust is broken, you have two choices: fight for justice or let someone else define your future. I chose to fight. And in the end, I came out stronger, scarred maybe, but free. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, even though it's still empty of her. I've cleaned out every trace, every reminder of what we once were. The photographs, the little mementos, even her favorite pillow, gone. I want her memory to fade, not because I forget, but because I refuse to carry her betrayal around like a burden anymore. I've finally let go of the anger that once consumed me, or at least I've learned how to manage it. Today, I took the last step. I handed over the keys, the final piece of my old life, to the landlord. As I watched her walk away, her figure shrinking into the distance, I felt a strange mix of relief and resolve. The door clicked shut behind her, and I knew with absolute certainty that I'd won this battle, not just the revenge, but the war for my peace of mind. Standing there, I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I'd never been one for regrets, but I did think about all the wasted time. Years I'd spent doubting myself, believing her lies, trying to fix what was broken beyond repair. That chapter was finally closed, sealed with her departure. I looked around the empty room, the silence almost deafening. It was a brutal reminder of everything I'd been through, but it was also a symbol of my strength. I survived. I fought, and I refused to let her betrayal define me. I realized the most important lesson. Sometimes, the only way to truly heal is to cut the poison out completely. As I pack the last of her things into a box, I feel a calm that wasn't there before. I've come to accept that trust is fragile, and betrayal shatters it in ways you never see coming. But I've also learned that reclaiming your life after someone hurts you isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about reclaiming your power, setting boundaries, standing tall, and refusing to be a victim. Looking back, I see all the red flags I ignored, her fleeting glances, the secretiveness, the way she always disappeared when her phone buzzed. But I was too blindly in love to see them. Now I know better. Love isn't about blind trust, it's about respect, honesty, and mutual effort. Anything less is just waiting for disaster. I walk out of the house for the final time, closing the door behind me with a quiet finality. I know I'll be okay. I'll rebuild better and stronger. I'll learn to trust again someday, but never blindly. Never again will I let someone manipulate me, lie to my face, and walk away unscathed. This experience has changed me, made me sharper, more cautious, but also more aware of my worth. The pain was real, but so was my resilience. I'm no longer defined by her betrayal. Instead, I am defined by how I rose from the ashes, how I refused to let her win. So, to anyone out there dealing with betrayal, know this: it's okay to feel broken at first. But don't stay there. Take control. Cut out the toxicity. Reclaim your life. Because the greatest revenge isn't hurting someone back. It's moving forward without them, stronger than ever. And that's exactly what I'm doing now.